Boys, I can't think of a better way to continue recapping this year than by going over every single fight night that went down via tier list, okay? Happy holidays. What are you getting? We're talking about the Apex, okay? Jesus. We saw it all this year, boys. We saw the blobs, the wars, the regrets, the Apex itself, but we also saw a lot of iconic highlights and actually good fight nights that you can actually brag to your kids about, okay? So just starting off with the first one we got here, man. I hope y'all forgot about this one, okay? I'm happy for you if you did, but Dern versus Ribas 2, this went down in the Apex here, and I'm going to put it in the C tier. Listen, there are redeeming qualities that I could put in the upper echelon because it had hella action, hella violence on display here. This fight night was like eating a fantastic meal, but you're eating it in the world's shittiest restaurant. You're eating it in a fucking dumpster outside the back. You know what I mean? There was so much action, but it really lacked in that name value and buzz and energy building into the fight night and the actual fight night as a whole, because also it was in the fucking Apex, man. Like, you know that's kind of like the forbidden love child of the UFC. So the fact that it was in the Apex, I'm going to take some points off here. The fact that it lacked in name value and energy, I got to put in the C tier here. But to be honest, so many finishes. I really love to see that. The excitement was there. Jacoby Smith, Marco Tulio, Felipe Bune, Soriano, Caesar Almeida. I'm handing these finishes out. These round one knockouts out by these guys out like an Oprah, okay? There were more finishes on the card as well, man. Also, Curtis versus Kopylov was a banger. So overall, there was action. There was excitement. A lot of it on this card. But due to it just being a really weak fight night in the build-up and the main event sucking ass, man, like, there just wasn't a lot of depth here, not a lot at stake. So because of that, I'm going to put in the C tier here, okay? Moving on up next to Adesanya versus Imavov. This was kind of a Saudi Arabia card that we thought was going to be stacked, and it was stacked, but I just don't think it delivered the way that these Abu Dhabi or Saudi Arabia or now Qatar, like these cards have a certain covetedness to them. I don't even know if that's a fucking word, but a certain expectation that they're going to be bangers, okay? And the UFC did that to themselves. And unfortunately, the Saudi Arabia card just wasn't really it, to be honest with you, man. The highs were high, but the lows were really lows. Like Pavlovich versus Rosenstruck was a stinker. Shara versus MVP was a stinker. And guess this, right? Hamdi Abdel Wahab versus Jamal Pokes was a stinker. So overall, man, there were some really shit fights on this card, but also there was some good stuff as well, okay? I'm not just going to say it was all bad. I'm going to put it in the C tier here. I think it was just kind of mid. We had Shamil the Blob. We had Terrence Kenny and Bogdan Grad getting really nice KOs on the prelims. Ziam versus Davis was a great fight. It had a lot of interesting scrambles, and seeing Ziam improve a lot in the wrestling was great to see. And Imavov got one half of his title shot stamp, if that makes sense, okay, with his knockout in the main event. So, again, there were really good moments, but there were also a lot of really shitty moments. And honestly, this card probably had a bit more bad than good, to where, yeah, the good was good, but not too good to be good. Does that make fucking sense? Okay, I'm going to put this one in the C tier here, okay? Moving on up next to Jerry Cannonier versus Gregory Rodrigues and the Apex once again, okay? Listen, I'm going to put this one in the D tier, but no disrespect to the main event. The main event was a top 3 fight of the year, in my opinion. I'm going to stand business on that. I think it's extremely underrated. Great back and forth war. High pace the entire time, man. Gets the blood fucking flowing, okay? Ended via a war, a knockout, and an upset all in one. All the essentials, you know what I'm saying? We're collecting them like Infinity Stones. The co-main, it did stink it up, to be fair, okay? The rest of the main card was mostly KOs by our violent kings in Sadikov and Shabazian, and the prelims, despite the action on the main card, were forgettable for the most part, okay? Besides like a Walter Walker continuing his heel hook streak, you know what I'm saying? So prelims had nothing. Main card had some pretty sick finishes in a great main event, but that was kind of it, you know what I'm saying? So only a couple of fights that really stood out, and overall, it was just another shitty Apex card for the most part, you know what I'm saying? So I'm going to put Cannonier versus Rodrigues in the D tier, despite some high highs. Moving on to next is Cejudo versus Song. Now we're going to eat good, okay? Now we're actually going to move up here. I'm going to put this one in the A tier here. Fight Night Seattle. No wonder they're going back to Seattle next spring, because they had a great crowd, a lot of great outcomes. Dude, the hype in the building, I can imagine, was unfucking real, because all of the finishes and they were so happy to be back in Seattle. Beautiful night of cinema for MMA, man. And overall, the main event was disappointing. Don't get me wrong. Seeing the eye poke go out like that and just seeing that be the outcome, and Cejudo's along the fence, just going like this, man. Just going like this, man. Like, I don't know. It was a kind of disappointing way to end the night. And the co-main was all right, but the rest of the card was stellar, okay? Christopher Nolan, Interstellar level of cinema, okay? Gene Silva round 1 KO. Alonzo Menefield putting on a blobby war, rearranging Julius Walker's chromosomes. Ian Cutelaba, Costa, Abdul Malik, Ricky Simone, crazy knockout. Vanderford, Rusaboya, Bukakis, violence on display. All of these guys got sick fucking finishes. The prelims were full of great finishes. The main card was pretty sick, besides like a disappointing main, and the co-main was all right. You know what I'm saying? But overall, this card was stellar. It was fantastic. A lot of back and forth, a lot of finishes. I feel like there's a great argument for S, but I'm going to put this one in the A tier here. I feel like the ones I am going to put in S just kind of barely edge it out. You know what I'm saying? Moving on up next to Kape versus Almabayev. Yeah, you see the highs that Seattle just got? Welcome back to reality, motherfuckers. Okay, like I'm Slim Shady himself, because this is going in the D tier, all right? Welcome back to the Apex once again. Kape's performance, say what you will about it and all the eye pokes and how we got the finish, but he did piece him the fuck up. Almabayev, that is, in the main event. So, and the takedown defense held up. So overall, Kape looked great. Kape looked fantastic. It was kind of the starting of the coming out party for him and putting him on the main event. I get it, but overall, Brundage in the actual co-main got a knockout. And by the way, Brundage was in the co-main. Cody motherfucking Brundage. We know who I'm talking about, right? He was in the co-main event, man. So on paper, this card was about to suck already, okay? Although we did have Hackbross versus Ribas, absolute war, and you had Sam Patterson and Mario Pinto with nice finishes, but the rest of the card was really forgettable, man. This card is like the Marvel side character that nobody knows a fuck about, but they just kind of get posted up with Captain America, and you're like, am I supposed to know this guy? Did I have to watch that to know what's going on? No, you didn't. You did not have to watch Kape versus Almabayev to know what's going on. Okay, man, so that's how I feel about this card. It was such a nothing card. It was such a filler card. There were a couple of highlights, but overall, I think it does deserve to go in the D tier, and it was in the Apex. You know what I mean? So moving on up next, and they just keep coming, bro. Vettori versus Dolidze 2. I'm pretty sure there's about to be a power outage in the entire Chicagoland area, in my entire area, me just talking about this fight. That's how bad Mother Nature doesn't want me talking about this shit. What a terrible fight night, man. I'm going to put it in the F tier here. There was a couple of sick knockouts. Shout out to big old Waldo and the local Argentinian GOAT, Kevin Vallejos. But this card was a national tragedy. It was a Godzilla-level threat. It was a weak lineup. It was a weak main event, and it ended up being a shit fight. There was no name value. There was no stakes in the card. There were mostly forgettable outcomes in fights. And it was in the Apex. And it was in the Apex as the little shit-flavored cherry on top, okay? So this is going in the F tier 100%, brother, okay? Moving on up next, joining it in the F tier, man. Dude, for a year that I thought 2025 had some really good fight nights, I was, kind of looking back like, wow, man, this year was pretty good. We're starting off pretty shit, to be honest. Another F tier here, man. A lot of lower echelon tiers. Edwards versus Brady. This was the UK card, the UK fight night. I'm going to put in the F tier. I think there's an argument for C or D, but I hated this one, man. I really hated it. Not only because a lot of people did bad with picks, but just the entertainment value was non-existent. The main event, I'm not going to lie, like, respect to Sean Brady. It was grappling domination and a nice submission. Take with it what you will. Some people hated it, some people loved it, and some people thought it was neutral. I was neutral with it. Like, I wasn't bored watching it. I was pretty impressed by Brady, and I love seeing Leon get his fucking face smashed and end up getting submitted. But the co-main, though, man, it was a stinker and a razor-close fight. It just had people arguing instead of actually appreciating the fucking fight. And Blachowicz versus Ulberg. Holland versus Gunner was all right. Chris Duncan, per usual, opening up the main card with violence and a submission, so I appreciated that. But not much on the main card, and the prelims were all duds, man. Just shit after shit. And I'm sorry to guys like Christian Leroy Duncan or Loner Kavanaugh. They were on the prelims, but I'm still a fan of guys like that, but this card as a whole, even with those kinds of fights and fighters, man, this card was such a tough watch from top to bottom. The prelims just had absolutely fucking nothing, okay, except tumbleweeds bouncing through. And the main card, you're just salvaging for basically anything to the point to where it was just a whole lot of nothing on this card, man, okay? Just give all the bonus money to Chris fucking Duncan, okay? I'm going to put this one in the F tier here, okay? Moving on up next to Moreno versus Erceg. I believe this was the Mexico City fight night here. Obviously, you already know with Brandon Moreno in the main event, brother. I'm going to put this one in the C tier here. I feel like the main and the co-main went pretty much how you want the main and the co-main to go usually, okay? There was a really fast knockout in the co-main, and then in the actual main event, it was a technical, fun, stand and bang 5-rounder. You know what I mean? You got all 25 minutes, but it was enjoyable to watch and very high level. And it played out on the feet, man. So the main was a banger, and the co-main was dope. We're getting his soul knocked out of his fucking body. You know what I'm saying? There were a couple of finishes and highlights on the rest of the card, especially the main card. But, you know, you had Atiba Gutierrez. You had Atiba Gutierrez, Jamal Emmers, Edgar Chavez, David Martinez. Like, these guys got sick finishes. They had great moments. But I feel like there were a lot of forgettable fights in this card as well. I feel like the pacing really struggled. Like, there weren't too many fights, and for every good one you got and every good finish you got, you kind of got a stinker after. So because it was so 50-50 and, oh, here's a great finish, and then, oh, here's a stinker. Oh, finish, oh, stinker, finish, stinker, finish, stinker. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was just, my mind couldn't keep up with it. I'm going to put it in the C tier here, okay? Good moments, but also a lot of shit ones as well. Moving on up next, man, and the F tiers just keep on coming. Josh Emmett versus LaRound Murphy, bruv, the future champion, bruv. I don't even know what to say here, bro. Except I'm putting this shit in the F tier here. The main and the co-mains were dominations, but stinkers, man. And this was the card with the iconic Torres Finney fight, bro. You know what I'm fucking talking about. Where Torres Finney just sat on him for 15 minutes. This was this card, man. It was shit everywhere. Look at what they've done to us. Look what they've done to us, my boys, okay? Shout out to Ode Osborne and Lee Chang-ho for nice knockouts, but most of the card was duds. You had like Brad Tavares versus GM3 as one of the best highlights here, folks, and it was a bad fight. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of domination on this card, a lot of stinkers, not a lot of moments, not a lot of finishes, a whole lot of nothing. And it was in the Apex, and it was in the motherfucking Apex. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to put this one in the F tier here, okay? Moving on up next, we're finally getting going. Thank God, dude. Gary versus Prates, bro, okay? This is the Kansas City fight night. I'm going to put it in the B tier here, okay? Very impressive performance in the main event by Gary. And the blood was really rising in the 5th round for everybody that was picking Prates or thought he was going to get that knockout. So it wasn't the most entertaining fight in the world. It wasn't as much of a back and forth as I thought it was going to be. But it was still enjoyable, and it was still very impressive by Ian Gary, okay? And in the co-main, I mean, Jesus, rest in peace to Anthony motherfucking Smith. Zhang Min Yang fucking ended his career via spamming the elbow button, bro, and busting him open, dude. It did wonders for him. Alice Garov got a nasty round 1 KO. Brown and Dalby was a fucking war with a flatline KO ending. Jesus. It's like the best movie you've ever seen with the best ending you've ever seen, okay? Abus versus Pereira was fun until the 3rd round, and then both of them, we realized why they have cardiac arrest. And then Chikadze versus Onama was the only thing on the main card to really stink it up, and I think we had 6 fights. So they went 5 for 6. The prelims were okay. There wasn't anything too crazy. Like, for every good fight or finish you got, you also got 1 or 2 boring time passers after. So I'm going to put this one in the B tier overall. The main card was fantastic. A lot you can brag to your kids about. And then the prelims were kind of just, you know, kind of hit and miss. But overall, they were solid enough to where I could justify this card being in the B tier. Because the main was so good. This one was stacked. It did have name value. There were stakes on the line, and we'd love to see it, okay? I'm putting this one in the B tier here. Moving on, I'm next to Sandhagen versus Figueiredo. I've been saying this all year, y'all. And if you are familiar with the channel, you're probably sick of it. I promise we're not going to have to talk about this in 2026. But I was here live for UFC Iowa. This was my first ever UFC live event, okay? And I really enjoyed it. I recommend it to anybody, man. If you're not going to like some of these numbered cards and the tickets are absurdly expensive and you want someone a little more cheap, go to a fight night, man. It's a good time. But I'm going to put this one in the B tier here. I think there's a good argument for C, but honestly, I'm a little bit biased, okay? I had the buzz of the crowd with me, all right? I had all the Iowa people with me who are honestly pretty damn nice. I didn't even really know anybody there. I was just talking to a bunch of strangers, and every interaction I had was really fucking nice, okay? So shout out to the people of Iowa. The actual card, the final 3 fights kind of carried pretty hard. I would put this card in like the D tier, honestly, or like the C tier if it wasn't for that, because Corey got a nice finish in the main. The fraud check, and not even the fraud checking, just like RDR shutting down Bo Nickel in the co-main event. And then Daniel Rodrigues, I believe it was, got a sick knockout over Ponzinibbio in the feature fight. Those 3 finishes really carried. We had Stevens versus Jones, which was an absolute dog fight, great back and forth. Asmat Bakoyev got a great KO in the prelims. Overall, I'm putting this one in the B tier because the main card was pretty good for the most part. The prelims kind of lacked a lot of WMMA fights, a real lack of finishes and excitement. But there were a couple finishes and nice back and forths. And the main card was pretty solid to where I feel like the B tier is pretty fair here, okay? Moving on next to Burns versus Morales. So for a lot of the ones on this list, I'm going to be shitting on the Apex cards pretty heavily and putting them pretty low. But this one isn't the case, man. Burns and Morales was a card a lot of people were complaining about going into it. Obviously, because it was a weak fucking lineup, okay? And it was like a main event that should have been like like the 5th fight of a card on a pay-per-view. You know what I'm saying? But overall, man, it was a sad but impressive finish in the main event, but it was really efficient and it was nasty. I hate seeing Dorino Burns go out like that, but crazy work from Morales. And overall, man, the co-main of Santos versus Yusuf was kind of boring, but even though that a lot of the main card missed the target, especially like Borralho with his questionable acting, there was also a lot of good on the main card. We had Arosa versus Costa in one of the best fights of the year. And the prelims as a whole for this card, bro, were generational, okay? I'm going to be going home and telling my wife about Burns and Morales' prelims. That's how good they were. You know what I'm saying? Overall, man, we saw a lot of impressive finishes on this card. And even though it was in the Apex, there was so much sheer excitement and gears turned into the point to where I feel like the B tier is actually pretty fair for this one, okay? Wish it was in front of a crowd and wish it was a bit more stat going into it, but for an Apex card, it was pretty good. We did get to see a lot of violence on display. Moving on up next, right back to Apex reality, okay? Gamrot versus Klein. Okay, first of all, the main event in, like, I forgot who it was. It was like Barber versus Blanchfield. That didn't even fucking happen, okay? Thank God. Question mark. Thank God that we didn't get to see that. But overall, the new main was just The rest of the card was very short-lived, and it just seems so forgettable that even the MMA gods themselves just wanted to skip to next Saturday night, even while they were watching this, bro. The main event just didn't happen. The actual new main event was a stinker. There was just nothing else on the card overall. There were barely any fights. It was a short card to the point to where this just deserves F in every sense of the word. And cherry on top, it was in the Apex. This card can go fuck itself, man, and I just feel like I wasted my time after, you know what I mean? Moving on up next to Usman versus Buckley 2. Okay, this one's probably going to be controversial. I can see people putting this all the way up in B and C, and there's going to be people like me who put it in D and F. I'm going to put this one in the D tier here. This was UFC's comeback to Atlanta. And I'm going to be honest, let's just call it what it was. The main event was very impressive, and it was a wholehearted comeback story. But let's just be honest, for as impressive of a win as it was a stinker for 4 of the 5 rounds. I just got to be fucking honest. It was a boring performance. Usman did such a good job at just picking him up, putting him down, and holding him there with such efficient squeeze and grip that Buckley just couldn't do fucking anything for the entire fight besides the 5th round. And then it's like, whoa, he actually knows takedown defense now. Crazy to say, but overall, man, dominance, the wrestling of Usman is on display better than ever, but it just was boring to watch, okay? Arguably could have fallen asleep during it, all right? The co-main just wasn't worth watching. It was like a Rose Namajunas fight. I didn't even watch. I'm just going to be fucking honest, okay? I was just talking to my girlfriend. I'm like, yeah, this fight's on. I'm not watching this shit. I heard it sucked though, okay? Shabazi versus Petrosi, I watched that one. That shit was bad. It was boring. Menefield versus Sai was one of the worst fights of this year, dude. Abdul Malik versus Brundage sucked as well until the 3rd round. Then they got really scrappy. Then there was a supposed finish, but it got overturned to a no contest, so it didn't even matter. Classic Brundage. Thank you so much, Brundage. Jesus. Genuinely no Joe Garbrandt versus Barcelos was the only solid fight on the main card, okay? So a lot of nothing on the main card besides a main event outcome that really shook things up. The prelims just weren't much as well, man. Besides a Malcolm Wellmaker stellar KO, hometown crowd. Jose Ochoa got a nasty debut KO, and Phil Rowe versus Ange Lusa was a crazy back and forth. And the early prelims, one of those early prelims gems. But overall, there's just such little redeeming qualities to this card to where there was some highlights. I'm not going to put it in the F tier, but like there is worse. We're about to get to it next, but overall, man, this card was bad, okay? I'm going to put it in the D tier here. And moving on to the worst that I'm talking about. Yes, there's worse. Yes, there is worse, and it is Hill versus Rountree, UFC Baku, okay? I'm putting this one in the F tier, man. I don't give a fuck. This was bad. This was a really, really bad card. All of the performance money, okay? Fight of the night, all the performance bonuses as well. They just went to Nazim Sadikov and Nicholas Mota. Not only because of how good of a fight they put on, there was just nothing else on this card, man. The main event was really impressive, but it was a letdown. Like, Rountree being able to neutralize Jamal Hill and just chop up the calves and just land that nice 1-2 down the middle and get a couple of knockdowns in, it's really impressive to see from Rountree, but it wasn't the war we thought it was going to be. We thought this was going to be like the light heavyweight BMF title bout. And instead, that's just not what it was, man. It was really impressive, but it was a stinker compared to what we thought it was going to be going into it. The co-main was the same thing. It was impressive, but it was a letdown. It was nice to see Vazeev get a win, though. Blades versus Cunha was all right for a heavyweight scrap, and I love seeing Blades get a win, but genuinely the only good fight and good finishes on this card was Sadikov versus Mota, absolute barn burner, and Orbai getting a submission against, I forgot the dude's name making his debut, but overall, man, those were the only 2 moments carrying this card, and I can't put a card in, like, B, C, or D if it has two fucking moments, okay? This was shit. Uncle Dana was disappointed. I'm sure the fans of Baku were disappointed, and I was disappointed, okay? I'm putting this one in the F tier here, all right? Moving on up next to Derek Lewis versus Taliesin Teixeira, the UFC's return to Nashville here. I'm going to put it in the B tier. I feel like there's an argument for probably a little bit lower here, but I don't think this card was as bad as people said it was. I actually thought it was pretty solid. Don't get me wrong, the lows were lows. They fucking sucked, okay? The co-main of like the Thompson robbery and just a stinker of a fight, it wasn't great. Garcia versus Cater, it was kind of it was more just impressive for Garcia in a way for him to move up the goddamn rankings, okay? In the prelims, I get it as well, man. Like, I feel like for every exciting performance you get a dud right after, so it was very even. So I understand why people aren't crazy about this card, but I feel like that the highs were pretty sick. You know what I'm saying? Like, the main event was a wild, fast KO. I understand it was arguably an early stoppage, but regardless, man, classic Lewis on display, man, and the poor Phantom Troop member in Teixeira is dead now, okay? Unfortunately. Sherrier versus Landwehr was a sick fight and sick finish. Petrino's heavyweight debut was wild to see, man. And I don't know, like I said, the prelims had some gems, but some duds as well, so I understand it. If you want to put this in C or D, I get it, but I feel like that there were enough decent moments, enough good moments on this card, and also was solidly stacked going in it to the point to where there was name value, there was action, just not too much of it to where I feel like B tier is pretty fair here, okay? Moving on to the next one we got here, man. Robert Whittaker back in Abu Dhabi once again. He faced Renier de Ritter. I'm going to put it in the C tier here. It was a pretty solid card. I feel like the really enjoyable parts were just like that white guy where he's like, nice. You know what I'm talking about? You probably don't, okay? I'm sorry, okay? But in general, man, the highs of this woman, I was really feeling it. Like, the main event was a good fight. You had Shara Bullet versus Marc-Andre Barriou, and we found out that Shara probably ain't ever going to be that top 5 level. But on the other end, it was a really fucking good fight. It was a really good war. Guskov got a nice KO, man, so there were some nice highlights, okay? But the co-main, I understand it was just Jan doing another 29-28 like he's saying, to giving him out on Christmas. I understand the prelims had mostly a whole lot of nothing. I mean, Muhammad Yahya almost got fucking murdered on live television, folks, okay? And Salikov got, like, upset of the year, knocking out Carlos Leo, but overall, that was about it for the highlights of the prelim. So I'm putting this one in the C tier because I did enjoy a few of the fights, a few of the finishes, but there was just a whole lot of nothing on here to the point to where I just don't think this fight night can really hang with the ones up in SA and B. You know what I'm saying? So moving on up next to Taira versus Park. Another Apex fight night we got here that I'm actually going to put some respect on, okay? I'm going to put this one in the B tier here because honestly, I did really enjoy it. Like, there was so much fucking action on this main card that it's hard to deny. The prelims as well. Tara domination in the main event that's aging well now that he's on a 2-fight win streak here. Rebecca versus Duncan. And Brenner versus Ribas, two of the best fights of the year. The S tier, the A tier, whatever it may be. 4 fights alone, man. We got those back-to-back. Plus a great main event finish. Like, it's hard to just ignore that. That's a big reason why I got to put this in B. On top of the fact that we got Rinya Nakamura with the nasty knockout on the prelims. Magny once again with the iconic upset TKO. Crafty as ever, okay? So prelims had a bit of substance, but honestly, the main card was carrying pretty hard here to the point to where it just feels disrespectful putting these kinds of great fights and finishes. Even though that there were, you know, maybe not as many as some kind of building up there was, I still think that this does deserve the respect of the B tier. Even though it's in the Apex, even though it was a shitty kind of weak lineup, we still got a bunch of bangers and finishes. So I'll put Taira versus Park in the B tier, okay? Moving on up next to, I guess, more of the Apex, bro. We got so goddamn much of it in our serial last year, okay? Dolidze versus Hernandez. I'm going to put this one in the C tier here. It was all right. It was solid. It was fine. You know what I'm saying? It was fair. Fluffy domination fest, as he usually does. This dude is a cardio fucking machine. And honestly, he just makes his grappling so goddamn entertaining. And honestly, you just feel bad for his opponent. You know what I'm saying? Erceg versus Osborne. It was all right. But honestly, it was more like Erceg got a great comeback to prove that he's not the flyweight Dominic Reyes. And that Ode Osborne isn't the flyweight Ryan Spann. You know what I'm saying? Leroy Duncan got a wild spinning finish. Eros Medic got a round 1 KO. And Elijah Smith, I believe, had the Rampage Jackson slam. And I think that was on this card. So a lot of these finishes were fucking crazy, man. There were some highs here, but a lot of tumbleweeds and dust floating around in this card as well. That's why I'm putting in the C tier. In general, a lot of finishes are saving this card, even though it was kind of Apex slop at times, to where I'm going to put in the C tier. It was just kind of mid, but overall, just nothing crazy, nothing too great in the grand scheme. You know what I'm saying? Besides the highlights. Moving on up next to UFC Shanghai. UFC China here. Walker versus Zhang. I woke up at 4 in the morning for this bullshit, bro, okay? I'm feeling like a prime UFC fan in Europe right now, okay? Walker versus Zhang, I'm going to put in the B tier here. I kind of enjoyed this one, man. I had to rewatch the prelims later in the day, but it is what it is, man. The main event was the upset of the year, and it was a fun 2 rounds. Like, seeing Johnny Walker, whose head was being handed to Zhang Minyang and being handed to China, being handed from Dana White on a silver platter, and yet he was able to fucking slap that silver platter out of his hand, and he was able to get a second round TKO. You know, the ref wanted Zhang to win as well because he was letting that combination slide, okay? It was like one of those Dragon Ball Z Sparking Zero types of combinations, okay? He wasn't responding. He got the TKO. The co-main stunk it up, though. I gotta be honest. Sterling versus Ortega, that was a rough watch. And it was 25 minutes, okay? It took a little bit out of my heart that day, so it was unfortunate to see, but there was a fun heavyweight fight. I think it was Pavlovich versus Cortez Acosta right before that. Kind of evened it out, you know what I mean? Big blobs on the grandest stage of them all. The main card opened up with a controversial stoppage, and the prelims had some pretty sick finishes from like Kyle Dawkins and Charles motherfucking Johnson with a great iconic upset KO. But also there were a bit of duds in the prelims as well. You had a nice Yiza KO, but honestly, with all that being said into account, I feel like there was more fun than bad on this card, even though there were some really slow fights at times that do hold this one back from like S or A. Not just blaming it all on the co-main, but that definitely didn't help. But overall, I feel like, again, this card was enjoyable for the most part here, so I'm going to put it in the B tier, all right? Moving on up next to UFC Paris, folks. Paris, folks, all right? This was a generational fight night here. I hope when my life flashes before my eyes when I die that this moment when I was watching this fight night kind of shows up in there in that glimpse. You know what I'm saying? It was that good. I'm putting this one as one of the S tiers here. One of the very, very few and rare S tiers here, okay? Imavov versus Borralho. This fight night deserves it, in my opinion. Like, aliens deserve to see this as a representation of the earth. You know what I'm saying? This card had like 10 of 12 finishes. It was absolute nonsense. The main event was a really technical back and forth decision, pretty close, but it wasn't boring by any means. I just don't think it was just like adrenaline rush and just dopamine rush. It's like a lot of these other finishes on the card were, but it was still really high level. It was still really technical, and Imavov stamped his #1 contendership spot. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't boring at all. It was a nice main event. The co-main was a BSD upset and a submission over poor Monkey D. Rufa here, but Caucus with a TKO. Mason Jones putting on a sick fight, and he had a nice comeback KO. Axel Sola TKO. All finishes on the prelims as well. That was just the main card. All finishes on the prelims as well, man, okay? So, again, 10 finishes of like 12 fights. And, of course, it was the 2 Frenchmen who took us to a decision. So, thank you so very much, okay? Shout out William fucking Gomez, Jesus. But overall, cards like this, to say that they kind of happen every blue moon is an understatement here. You just don't say shit like this that is just constant back-to-back excitement. Usually when the main card is really good, the prelims suck, and vice versa. So, to see them both equally just kill it, to be honest, man. I love to see it. It deserves the S here, okay? Paris is just cooking lately these past couple of fight nights. You know what I'm saying? Moving on up next to Noche UFC. UFC Noche? I'm too uncultured to even fucking know. But Lopes versus Silva. I'm going to put it in the C tier here. The main event carried hard here. Not only in terms of just the build-up, but how the actual fight night ended up playing out, man. Like, it was a top 5 fight of the year in the main. And even in the build-up, it just seemed like one of the most, if not the most intriguing fight on the card by miles and fucking miles, okay? The co-main was like the new generation taking over the old with Martinez versus Font. Like, the fight itself wasn't anything crazy, but Rafa Garcia KO'd our poor good old Jared Gordon, man, right before that. That was unfortunate to see, but nice knockout, Jesus, man. Alexander Hernandez continuing his KO streak and redemption arc in general right before that. Santiago Luna proving that he's a young dog on the rise. He had a great comeback and knockout to open up the main card. So the main card honestly had some pretty nice highlights. I feel like that's why I'm going to put it in the C tier, because the prelims were a whole lot of fucking nothing, bro. Just nothing substantial, nothing notable at all, okay? Raul Rosas Jr. with a dull decision. You want me to talk about that? I refuse, all right? So overall, for a Noche card, man, this really lacked the name value, and honestly I feel like a lot of them do, to be honest. I feel like there's so much potential and they hype them up, and then we kind of get these kinds of cards, these C tier cards. Main card carried hard, it was enjoyable, but the prelims had a whole lot of nothing, and I gotta include that here because it literally is like 70% of the damn card, and I'm gonna put this in the C tier, okay? But shout out that fucking main event. Moving on up next to UFC Perth. Australia, I'm glad that y'all are cooking with 326 next year, because this was rough. And you had to deal with 312. You guys have had some rough fucking cards this year, okay? I'm going to put this in the D tier here, man. Ulberg versus Reyes was just a weak fight night. I'm sorry. Ulberg ended the hope of humanity and the comeback title run of Dominic Reyes, man. Jimmy Crute did get a nice sub in the co-main, but it's like Crute was the fucking co-main. Jimmy fucking Crute. You know what I'm saying? I get they're trying to build him up as one of the more iconic names from that region, but still, man. Rest of the main card was pretty forgettable or controversial. Neil Magny, I'm fucking looking at you. That was the last fight I saw before I went to sleep. I hit him with a little me. I had to wake up at like 4 a.m. the next day for a half marathon, so I fucking missed everything after that. I had to rewatch it. I woke up that next morning and I saw Reyes get knocked out. It was tough, but overall, Neil Magny pulling his bullshit on the main card, and besides that, I mean, Tom Nolan got a sick finish, but the prelims had a whole lot of nothing as well. It was a dumpster fest on fire here. I appreciate, you know, like at least Ulberg got a finish. I appreciate Crute got a finish. I appreciate like the Tom Nolan shit, but overall there was just so much forgettable nonsense on this card or just questionable shit to where the D tier is pretty fair for this one, okay? Moving on up next to Rio. UFC Rio Oliveira versus Gamrot. This was such a feel-good main event, bro. Genuinely, there was a tear in my fucking eye, man. Well, not really, but it's what it felt like, dude. Seriously. Yeah, let's go! Come on, baby! I love to see Oliveira back in the win column once again, and it was a great fight. It was a sick back and forth while it lasted, but Oliveira was too good in these scrambles, dude. He's too good at taking the back, and he's too good with that rear naked choke. Listen, for the actual fight night itself, I'm going to put it in the B tier here. I enjoyed it, to be honest. I'm glad I was rushing my ass home from work to fucking come home and see this one. The co-main was kind of boring, don't get me wrong. It was just, you know what I mean? Figueiredo versus Jackson, close decision. If Jackson actually threw a bit more, he could have won the fight and actually made it a bit more entertaining, but it is what it is. Joel Alvarez, for the most part, had a great performance, but he fumbled his 100% finishing ratio. It is what it is. A prized possession in MMA, man, so it really sucks to see. Mario Pinto proved that he was a genuine heavyweight prospect. He got a really nice ground and pound TKO finish, I believe, okay? And the prelims honestly had a nice amount of notable moments as well, man. Like, shout out guys like Michael Aswell and Vitor Petrino, man, with nice, efficient finishes, okay? So overall, man, the prelims had enough substance and the main card had enough, and we got to go home with a nice feel-good main event to where I feel like the B tier is pretty fair for this one, okay? Moving on up next to Dorita versus Allen. For some reason, when I think about this card in retrospect, I think two things. One, I think about the Guru, Lucas, and Bedtime Trio commentary, right? Like, that's kind of what carried the card for a lot of us in the build-up. And then also, when I think about this card, I think it's like a D or an F. But honestly, when I went back and I really watched a couple of the fights, I really looked at the results, and I really did this little recap. This was a solid fight night, man. It was pretty good. I don't know why I was tripping and thinking it was bad in memory. I'm going to put this one in the B tier here. I enjoyed it. I think it deserves it. It was an interesting main event, to say the least. There's lots of different ways you can look at it, but it was a big upset regardless. The co-main was an absolute mess. I mean, the nut shot from Mallet to Holland kind of ruined the fight after that, and Holland just stepped off the fucking gas, man. Never better pick Holland, man. You can just never pick him, dude. Zahabi versus Cheeto was a war right before that, to be fair. Great, fantastic fight. And we got a sick Charles Jourdain finish. And Kyle Nelson, I mean, he got fucked over by the ref. He almost got an insane finish as well, like multiple times throughout the fight. Poor Matt Frivola almost got finished like 5 times, but overall, man, the main card was pretty damn good, and the prelims were honestly kind of forgettable, but it was very sick to watch in the moment for like the Dober comeback KO or like the Belgaruid KO upset, you know what I'm saying? So prelims for the most part were but the highlights were there, and the main card was pretty solid to where I feel like the B tier is pretty fair for this one, okay? Moving on up next to Apex Slibbity Sloobity motherfucking Slop, okay? We got Garcia versus Onama. It wasn't that bad, to be honest. I'm saying it's slop, but it was okay, to be honest. I'm going to put it in the C tier here. This was the UFC betting scandal card, okay? So if that kind of just paints the tone of exactly what was going on here for the next couple of weeks, it was interesting, man, to say the fucking least, man. But for the actual fights, it was a masterclass KO from Garcia in the main. It was our big old Waldo starting his fan favorite arc, KOing Monte Delisha and getting the buzz going. And the rest of the main card was solid, like a nice Radke submission and a Nascimento back-to-back submission as well. So that was solid. The main card was there, but the prelims just had a whole lot of nothing, and this was in the fucking Apex to the point to where main card carried hard. It had a lot of finishes and entertainment, but the prelims had nothing, and the Apex sucks the soul out of you to where I'm putting this in the C tier, okay? Moving on up next, in Apex once again, Jesus actual Christ, bro. It happens so much. Bonfim versus Brown, I'm putting in the B tier here. Bonfim shaking up the world here in the main event, man. For the 100,000 people actually watching these kinds of cards, man, Bonfim got a great finish. It was wild. The main card honestly had a lot of sick finishes, so I gotta pay respect to where it's due. The prelims, for the most part, were just kind of and they kind of dragged. It felt like really slow pacing, besides like the Chael Sonnen, Ric Flair, Salve, and Practical Jokers, heavyweight love child, representing the USA, man. He was cutting his promo, but overall, the main card was so fucking sick, to be honest, where even though this wasn't the Apex, and even though the prelims were just kind of, they were solid, I feel like the B tier might be pretty fair for this one, okay? Moving on up next to UFC Qatar, Saryukian versus Hooker. I'm going to put this one in the S tier here, man. One of 2 S tiers for the entire tier list here, and I feel like it deserves it. This was just, we knew in the build-up it was going to be fucking good, and that it was, man. Saryukian masterclass in the main event. Poor Hooker is saying how bad he is now. He's joining the Moicano Unk Cigar Club, okay? Gary versus Bilal was a fun fight, probably fight of the night. Orabai just murdered Hermanson once again, the poor fucking guy. Ozdemir and Big Bad Waldo got great KOs, and Horiguchi's UFC return was sick as fuck, dude. Pure domination. I was screaming out of my goddamn chair, okay? Prelims had notable current events like it's the fucking CNN news, man, like Luke Riley's debut. Nice KO, man, out of nowhere in the second round to start it off. Taporia versus Almacan, and Almabayev got a crafty sub. So, like, the prelims were there, okay? 2 thumbs up, okay? So the main card was there. 2 fucking thumbs up. You know what we got in total, folks? 4 fucking thumbs up, all right? I'm putting this one in me just figuring out basic math, even though I'm 25. I'm going to put this one in the Esther here, man. It had it all, truly, okay? And getting on to the last one we have here, man. The last fight night. What are we going to remember this year by? Well, that's not how that works, but just, you know what I'm saying. Royval versus Kape here. I'll put in the C tier. It was okay. It was solid. It was good for an Apex card, but it was just, it was all right. Poor Royval in the main event, man, but it shows how good Kape was, and it was a sick knockout. Vallejos with a comeback KO in the co-main, man. Argentina's baby boy! And Almabayev right before that, though, I'm going to be honest, he put me to sleep. I actually woke up right before the main event started. I had to rewatch the fucking Vallejos KO the next day, bro. I missed it. Because Almabayev, man, this brother put me to sleep. It is what it is. It's not a joke here, okay? Costa got a great head kick KO right before that. Before that, though, was a heavyweight stinker with Nuzichuku, and I already forgot the fucking dude's name. Buchecha. I think it was Buchecha, bro. It was a heavyweight stinker, man, okay? King Green had a nice win, though, but it was, like, entertaining, but also underwhelming at the same time. Look at it how you will. So the main card was just kind of like on and off, really, man. And the prelims had some really nice debuts from Steven Asplund, the blown-up Max Holloway, and Yaroslav Amosov. He's going to be fucking dangerous for the division, but honestly, nothing else besides that notable, really. So I feel like the C tier is pretty fair for this card, okay? And that's gonna be it for me ranking every single fight night of 2025. If you made it this far in the video, I really appreciate it, boys. Thank you so very much, okay? And let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Were my rankings fucking right, or where were they wrong, or where would you have certain fight nights up in S or F? Let me know in the comments below. Appreciate y'all a lot, boys. We have fights once again in just 4 more weeks. 4 weeks, so hold the fuck on. Hold on, boys. We got this, all right? Appreciate y'all a lot, man, and have a good one, guys.